Hi, I just bought a Wild Country Zephros 2 tent, which I'm really happy with. One thing that was a bit of a problem for me was the pack size, and it was mainly because the poles were so long. That was about 54 centimetres long. And the reason for that is that the tent has one archway, one hoop that goes through the middle of the tent, which is a nice length for packing away, and these two fiberglass end poles, and they are about 54 centimetres long, I think, from memory. So I wanted to try and make these shorter. So the two options I had were to make a new collapsible pole or to cut one of these poles and just glue, epoxy maybe, a sleeve on so they could go together. And I decided that if I was to cut this and put a sleeve on, I'd end up with four pieces that weren't attached together. I could easily lose one, so I went with making a new pole. My previous tent, I still had the poles, which I just chopped apart into lots of small, chopped the elastic, so I've got lots of small sections, and then it was a simple matter to make a pole of the correct length. Oh, there's some offcuts. So these are the poles that I came up with. Folds down. Where the cut isn't that critical because it is shorter than the other poles, the archway poles, so it reduces the pack size just as I would need. At one end, let's see if I can, there is a plug that goes into a grommet at the foot of the tent, and at the other end my poles had a smooth dome like attachment, so I used it again, and that was perfect. I also wrapped a little bit of tape around. That wasn't really that necessary, but I thought, oh, if there are any sharp edges or anything like that, why not just cover that up. Yeah, even though there probably weren't any, I don't know, I got a bit tape happy. So the poles just need to be the same length as the originals, with the key measurement being from the end that they match up to this point where they insert into the grommet, just there. One thing I did find was that this fiberglass pole is a little bit more flexible than the new pole, and the only problem that caused for me was that I needed to make sure I cut this end insert just a little bit shorter. As you can see, it's, there we go, it's shorter, and the reason for that was this one can bend a little bit when you're trying to take the pole out of the tent, and this one here doesn't have that amount of flex, so it was a little bit of a tighter fit. And another thing I found was that my tent, while the poles were exactly the same length, the correct length, my actual tent, the tolerances weren't as perfect as that, and it turned out that the head end of the tent, the foot end, sorry, the end that's got the doors that open up, had a slightly shorter distance for the pole to fit into, and that made it a little bit difficult to get the pole out, so I just had to make that one a nose shorter, probably about 2 or 3 mil shorter, which is why I've got a bit of tape on this piece to remind me that that is the pole that goes at the door end. Yeah, so it's a really simple matter. You just need to, let's see if I can pull this one out. Let's try this one. There we go. It's just as simple as a bit of elastic tied onto that fitting. You can buy these new and make it from new. I was lucky enough to have spare parts, and it's the same on the end, on the other end. Just it's a rounded off one, but it's got the same fitting on it. I can't see any reason why you couldn't use one of these on both ends. And of course it's pretty important to round everything off. Make sure there's no burrs and things like that. There we go. Tuck that knot into there, and then it just pops itself back in. So I haven't got any digital scales, but I pop these on scales, and kitchen scales, just the old manual ones. We live in New Zealand, we haven't gone digital yet, and these were around the 800 grams for the two of them. And wait a minute, that can't be right. It must be 80 grams, mustn't it? 80 grams for the two of them, and these seemed probably about the same, but maybe a tiny bit less, maybe 75. I really didn't have an accurate measure, but no real weight saving, but maybe a little bit of a strength advantage, and definitely a packability advantage. So now when it's packed up, I'm saving a significant amount of pack size. Just to give you an idea of the purpose of this pole, I won't put the tent up in this video because I've got a cat, and my cat is vicious to tents. I've got a MacPack tent that's pretty badly damaged by my cat, but it's too sad to talk about. At the top of either end of the tent, there is a little insert here, so I'm leaning around my camera, it makes it a bit tricky, but we slide the pole into that insert and then pull it tight, and there's a grommet down here, and it's just as simple as popping the pole into that grommet, and that is the end of the tent. So one of those at each end and that hoop pole in the middle. I'll make another video of the tent up because the tent I've got is the 2017 onwards model. I think there's a new model called the Compact which might actually come with a collapsible pole, but a lot of the videos on YouTube show some disadvantages of the tent, some of them being that it doesn't have any pockets on the inside, and that the door, when it zips open, hangs on the floor of the tent. But my model does have a pocket inside the door, and the door does unzip all the way around and can actually tuck into that pocket right out of the way. So some of the things that earlier videos have mentioned as problems are fine now. Great little tent. And hopefully you guys found that useful. All the tools you need is a file, a hacksaw, maybe a little bit of sandpaper, and if you're lucky you've got some old tents lying around with spare poles. Otherwise I know you can buy these on AliExpress, and I think they're about 10 for just a few dollars actually. A bargain. There we go. Thanks for watching.